I'll give you a brief overview of the program and how it has operated to date. The Immigrant Investor Program was launched in April 2012 with the view of attracting overseas investors into Ireland. Up until that point, Ireland had quite a number of programs in place and quite a number of state agencies that were geared towards attracting corporate investment into Ireland. And that is corporate bodies, companies based overseas who wanted to invest in Ireland to set up their own businesses, to locate manufacturing or services operations to Ireland. That was very well developed. What was not there, however, was a facility for individual investors to invest in Ireland. And not necessarily people who wished to locate their own particular investments in Ireland, but who wished to make an investment in Ireland and would be facilitated with appropriate immigration permissions that would allow them to come and go to Ireland as they pleased, as they saw fit. So we had been toying with this idea for some time, and we finally got government approval for this at the beginning of 2012, and the program was launched in April 2012. At the time, there were 4 options. We have reviewed the program recently, and there are now 6 options under the program. These are options for investment, and I'll briefly give an outline of each of those. The first investment option is the Immigrant Investor Bond, and that is a requirement for an investment of €1 million at 0% per annum for 5 years. The second option then is the Enterprise Investment. That is €500,000 in an Irish-based business. And the business can either be a startup or it can be an established business. It has to be a cash injection into the firm itself, so it cannot be a stock market purchase, but it can be somebody can take an equity stake in that business, or it can be a debt investment as well. That's acceptable to us. That investment must be committed for a minimum of 3 years. It is up to the investor and the company that they are investing in as to how long the investment may be committed, but for immigration purposes, the minimum is 3 years. The third option then is a new one. We have 2 new options that we have added. One is the Immigrant Investor Fund. That is being finalised at the moment. That is €500,000 into an approved fund. We have been in very long and complicated negotiations with various providers and also with the central bank in Ireland as the regulatory body to get that set up, and we're very hopeful that we will be launching that quite soon. It's been a very hard process. I think Ian and I can verify that. The next option then was one that was announced in the budget of last year. This is an option in real estate investment trusts. These are stock market quoted vehicles for investing in real estate, and they allow investors to hedge their bets essentially by putting their money into a fund that will invest in real estate rather than buying individual real estate projects themselves. I can't say too much about that at the moment because, again, the details are being finalised, so we don't even have a minimum amount, but it will be quite high. However, that will be a stock market investment in a REIT that is quoted on the Irish stock market. And there are currently 3 REITs, I think, quoted on. There's at least 2. I think a third one was launched quite recently. So there are 3 REITs on the Irish stock market, and they will be available to investors very soon. The 5th investment then is the mixed investment option, and that is geared towards investors who may want to locate themselves to Ireland immediately, or they may wish to locate some of their family members here for education purposes or for work purposes, whatever. The mixed investment option allows a person to purchase a residential property of minimum value of €450,000 and combine that with an investment in the Immigrant Investor Bond, the first option, of €500,000. So it's a minimum investment of €950,000 split between the bond and the property. Obviously, because it's a minimum value for the property, it's whichever property the person buys can push up the level, but it will be a minimum of €950,000. The final option then is what we call the endowment option. That's this is the 6th option. This is the philanthropic option, and this has actually proved quite surprisingly popular under the program. We created this initially gearing it towards what we were looking at. The market we were aiming towards was the Irish American diaspora, people who are several generations from being native. Several generations of Irish Americans that were down the line. They wouldn't automatically be entitled to Irish citizenship, but nonetheless they had this connection with Ireland. And it's a philanthropic gift, and it allows a €500,000 gift, in effect, philanthropic gift, into a project with a definable public good. It can be in the arts, sports, health, education area. If somebody wishes to endow a chair at a university or make an endowment to a university, they can do that. This has been a surprisingly popular option, including from China, I hasten to add. But we thought it would primarily be North America. In fact, we've had some interest in it from North America, but most have been from, let's say, Eastern Europe and Asia. Those are the 6 options. The final one is the one that's a gift. There's no return on it whatsoever. The other options, with the exception of the Immigrant Investor Bond, which has a 5-year commitment, the rest have 3-year commitments. The details of the REIT, the commitment under the REIT, are being ironed out, so I'm not going to say too much about those at the moment. They're being finalised. So how an individual applies, we have, they contact us, they fill out the application form, which is being updated, and there's new guidelines and application forms which are ready to roll very soon, as soon as we finalise the final 2 details of the options. They indicate which option they are interested in. They provide their supporting documentation, which is essentially proving that they have the funds for the investment, that they have the right to transfer those funds if it's in a corporate entity. Also, the usual immigration requirements of proof of good character and an individual's valid travel documents. For the application stage, we will take good quality photocopies or scans of travel documents. People are obviously quite sensitive about giving their travel documents as part of an application stage. We're quite happy to accept good quality scans of every page in a passport. A person submits those. They can also nominate which family members they wish to be included in the application form as well. I'll speak a little bit about that later on. The application then is submitted to our evaluation committee. Now, the evaluation committee meets currently 4 times per year, but they can meet more frequently if the volume of applications requires that. The evaluation committee consists of senior management representatives from various state ministries and departments and state agencies that are charged with attracting investment into Ireland. So at present, the Department of Justice is represented on it by our Director General, who also chairs the group. There are also representatives from our Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation, or Labour and Enterprise Ministry, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Department of Finance is also represented, and 2 key state agencies as well, the Industrial Development Authority, the IDA, and Enterprise Ireland. So that membership are circulated with the details of all the applications, and the meetings then determine, they deliberate on the applications, and they will make a formal recommendation to the Minister as to whether a person should be admitted under the programme or otherwise. It is ultimately the Minister who makes the decision based on the recommendation. You may understand we have a new Minister at the moment, and there are some applications going to her quite soon. The previous Minister, he often came back with some queries of his own, but he never overturned a recommendation of the Evaluation Committee. So the recommendation from the Evaluation Committee will be quite strong. Ministers often will read a brief, and they may come back with just a few queries just to show their officials that they are reading them and that they do expect a high standard. But so far, we haven't been overruled on any of the recommendations that have been made to date. Once an individual is accepted, we require one further piece of documentation before we will issue the residence permissions, and that is an affidavit attesting to the person's good character. We have a draft of the affidavit which we will supply to their solicitor or to the individual themselves when they have been accepted under the programme, and essentially it attests to the fact that an individual has never been convicted, investigated or charged with a criminal offence in any jurisdiction, and that is just our final insurance policy, as it were, that we are getting individuals of very good character who are coming into this programme. Once an individual has been granted permission, or rather the permission that a person is granted, it is our Stamp 4 permission, which is in effect our permanent residency stamp, our passport stamp, our permanent residency permission. That is issued to the investor and to all of their family members. And Stamp 4 will allow you to work, study, or run your own business in Ireland, or to just live here. You can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to get any extra permissions like work permissions or study permissions. An individual can do whatever they do. Stamp 4, while you are residing in Ireland, is also reckonable towards naturalisation. I know Brian raised this question. I'll speak a little bit about that later on because there is a bit of a difference. That permission is initially issued for 2 years. We will also issue a multi-entry visa which allows you to come and go to Ireland as you please as well for the same the same period. We only issue for 2 years because after 2 years we do a check to make sure that the investment is still in place, and that essentially is the only check at 2 years. There's the usual immigration conditions as well, that you haven't been charged with a criminal offence and you haven't become a financial burden, but that's basically it. The permission is quite unique, and this is for all family members and the investor themselves, is that in order to get it renewed after 2 years, you don't have to have lived constantly in Ireland for that 2-year period. We stipulate that 1 visit per year to Ireland is sufficient. That's all we ask. And that can be, you can fly in on Monday morning and fly out on Monday evening. You can fly in for dinner, for a game of golf, to check on your investment, to meet with your investment partners here, or for as long as you want. That is all that we stipulate. We recognise that many of the people who might be interested in this particular programme have significant commercial interests elsewhere in the world. It may not be pragmatic for them to live in Ireland initially and to move everything to Ireland as soon as they have made that investment. Nonetheless, they will have this permission which allows them to reside here at any point that they choose to, and they will be allowed to come and go to Ireland as they see fit. The multi-entry visa will be issued for the same duration as the residency permission. We then renew that for a further 3 years to bring it up to a total of 5 years. After 5 years, there are no more investment conditions. The only conditions for renewal, and I say renewal, but it's a very, very informal renewal. It will be a very informal renewal process for people. After 5 years, the only check will be that you have not become known to us for criminal activity or for, as we say, becoming a financial burden on the state. Yeah. When we say financial burden on the state, we really mean that a person has needed state assistance to reside in Ireland. So essentially that means that you're getting unemployment benefit, or that you're getting some kind of housing assistance that you can't exist other than with intervention from the state. You do have other rights to state services, which I can talk about as well. But when we say you haven't become a financial burden on the state, it's the fact that you would not be living in social housing and getting unemployment benefit or social assistance from the state, and that will be your sole source of income. So that's really the check. So after 5 years, we then renew the permission for another 5 years, and effectively the permission is renewed every 5 years for perpetuity. Moving forward, we may even end up issuing the permission for the duration of a person's passport, but at the moment it's 5 years. It is in effect permanent residence in Ireland for you and your family members. With the sole condition, and after 5 years, as I say, there are no further investment conditions. You don't have to make any investments in Ireland after 5 years if you do not wish to. We obviously hope that all investors will see lots of opportunities in Ireland and will continue to invest here. But nonetheless, that isn't a condition of your immigration permission. After 5 years, the only condition is that you do not get in trouble with the police or become a threat to national security, and do not become a financial burden on the state. So that will be it. And that applies to all family members as well. And that condition under this particular permission as well, that you don't have to reside here to get that permission renewed every 5 years, holds as well. Some of the eligible family members, this is something that we get quite a lot of questions about as well, and the updated guidelines will elaborate on this. It is automatic for a person's spouse or partner and their children under the age of 18. For children over the age of 18, if they are still financially dependent upon the parents, usually if they're in full-time education, either in Ireland or in another country, in China or another country, they will be eligible as well, up to the age of about 24. If the children have to be single as well, they have to be unmarried. We will review cases where there is an actual level of dependence, but our guideline age is about 24. Above that, the individual will probably have to make an application in their own right to reside under the programme. But they can enjoy rights as a family member if they're under the age of 24 and still financially dependent. Usually, in third level education, if they're at university, that's usually a good indication for us. We have issued permission to family members in such cases, and they've gotten it. Maybe I'll say a little bit about naturalisation, because I know
I think that's
a concern here.
Yeah.
Reside here in order to get your permission renewed. However, everybody who applies for Irish naturalisation, irrespective of the permission that they are resident under, has to have lived in Ireland for 5 years out of an 8-year period. It's governed by legislation. So although you might have a permission to reside here, an actual residency permission, you will have to demonstrate, if you're applying for naturalisation, that you have 5 years legal residence in Ireland. Now, what we mean by 5 years legal residence, or 5 years physical residence, I think is a much better description, is that you would have to demonstrate that Ireland has been your primary centre of interest, that Ireland is your home, that you've been living here. We take a pragmatic approach. We know that people have to travel abroad for business reasons, but there would have to be an indication that maybe your family are here, they're being educated here, and that you're spending, let's say, the majority of your home life in Ireland, for want of a better description. It isn't analogous to tax residence, so there isn't a set number of days per year which satisfy the naturalisation condition. It's perhaps a little bit more organic than that. We are looking to see if a person is truly committed to Ireland, for want of a better description, that they intend to make Ireland their home. The legislation stipulates that you have been living in Ireland and you will continue to live in Ireland for naturalisation. Naturalisation is done at the pleasure of the minister. It's a gift. Now, in effect, or rather, the minister administers this on behalf of the Irish state, but he or she has the ultimate say as to whether somebody is naturalised or not. It isn't an automatic right. You may all be familiar that with the naturalisation procedures that Minister Shatter introduced, or Mr. Shatter as he is now introduced, when he was minister. Over 65,000 people, I think, have been, nearly 70,000 people have been naturalised. That is, of course, that Ireland has only become a country of destination for migrants since the 1990s, really, since the mid-1990s. So all of these people are now getting to the stage where they can naturalise. But those procedures have been enhanced, and we have introduced citizenship ceremonies. So Ireland is fully committed to the naturalisation process. It is not a process that is in any way opaque, although some applicants might argue the contrary. But it's part of government policy that individuals who have spent the requisite time here are welcome to naturalise, and we welcome that. So we have been fully supportive of that. The reason why we in the initial guidelines, we perhaps didn't elaborate on naturalisation, and maybe some people around the table might be aware of this. Ireland did have an investment-based naturalisation scheme in the past. That became politically very difficult. So we are very anxious that this scheme, which is a residency scheme, bears no similarities to the previous scheme. Nonetheless, naturalisation is available to everybody who is granted residence under the Immigrant Investor Programme. And because you have residence effectively to perpetuity, you don't have to start residing here in the first 5 years. You can reside here, start to reside in Ireland, make it your home whenever it suits you to do so. So that can be from day one, the day after you get your permission. It can be in 5 years' time, 2 years' time, 10 years' time. It's very much up to the applicant. But we do stipulate that a person must make Ireland their primary home if they want to naturalise.
With just a question, and I bring it back because my background is financial studies. But I just bring it back in relation to the naturalisation there. We have a term, there's a term in the tax law called domicile.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that if one is aiming to make their domicile Ireland, that the naturalisation process would, if you like, that would actually cement it, for want of a better word?
I think it would be fair to say that if somebody was tax domicile here, that is certainly going to.
I'll explain what domicile means.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
What Peter has just said there basically is your basis here.
That would demonstrate on the part of the applicant a very firm commitment to Ireland.
Okay. Just a couple of questions before I throw it out, just while I have.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I know that the IIP people are looking at is the projects that they will be looking at. Now, I spoke briefly to Kieran, so I did, as I said some time ago, and one of the projects that we're looking at, they're worried and they want to know that is this a genuine project? Does it need prior approval, etc.? It obviously has to get approval from the department as part of the application process.
Yes.
But if the numbers stack up, it can be anything really.
Yes,
within reason, obviously.
Within reason, there are some restrictions on investing in property. Property is only an option under REITs and under the mixed investment option. Although we do stipulate if a person is investing in an enterprise and the enterprise investment comprises the purchase of property that the enterprise is going to be run from, that will be acceptable. The example we give is a hotel. If somebody's going to buy a hotel building and run it as a hotel, that will be an acceptable investment under the program. We also stipulate as well that you only have to indicate your intention to invest in a particular project in order to be given a conditional approval. Now that's as a safeguard for investors. You don't have to commit your money before you get an approval. Now it will be an approval conditional on you investing your money. Obviously, that we want the money. You will have to show proof the money has been transferred. But effectively, you don't have to commit your money to your desired project until you get that approval. And in fact, by submitting your project here as well, now we don't take. Obviously, there's the usual caveats that investments can go up as well as down. We don't really make an assessment as to whether the investment is going to be successful or not. The committee do look to make an assessment as to whether they feel that it is potentially viable. Now, we're not guaranteeing the investment for investors, but obviously the investment has to look like it has potential. It has some potential. That it's not money that's going to be committed to an enterprise that's on its last legs and is obviously going to die. We do look for a business plan with projects, and the business plan should demonstrate that there's a future for the business, how the money is going to be used. That said, if you do lose your money in your investment, I don't like speaking about this because it sounds like we're wishing bad luck on everybody at the very beginning. But if an individual does lose money in investment, and even if they lose all of it, that won't have a bearing on their immigration permission. We take the view, if an individual has decided they're going to commit money to the Irish economy, and they're going to do so in good faith, and they have made their own assessment of the project, and they've taken a punt, as it were, well, that's good enough for us. We're not going to punish somebody because by withdrawing their immigration permission because they have lost their investment. The other conditions will still stand about becoming a financial burden on the state, so an individual will still have to ensure that they will be financially viable themselves in the state if they wish to live here. But we're not going to punish an individual who loses their shirt on an investment.
Just you mentioned earlier on as well in relation to the immigrant investor program about the investment being made by way of equity or cash and equity or debt.
Yeah.
That would the department wouldn't have any issue about the type of debt, whether it be a debenture or a mortgage over a property or anything like that, or a security over that.
I haven't seen that to date.
No,
I can't imagine.
If some people are putting money in, they might want to get some kind of security that they're going to get their money back.
Yeah,
in the event of something going wrong or anything like that. I mean, we have to cover all eventualities.
I understand that. Yeah.
People do look.
Really, what the committee are looking for is to see what use the money is going to be put to.
Okay.
One concern will be that money is going to be parked in a project, just left on deposit, and isn't going to be touched.
Yeah.
That isn't acceptable. The whole objective of this particular scheme, this program, is to channel money into job-creating investments or job-protecting investments. Yeah. So the committee are always going to be very happy where they see that employment is going to be created, either initially or down the line, or existing employment is going to be protected by this, and that the money is going to be used to develop the business, that it'll be invested in whatever, in capital or buildings, anything to expand the operations of the business itself and to protect those operations. So
I know I'm having the questions here, but I think I'm saying them for everybody and they can come back. The second thing I just have here is tertiary education and the is it 50? What's the limit?
The limit will be 50,000.
Is that in the total?
Yes, yeah. You can discount your investment into a particular project. Now, this is something we will allow a person to do from an immigration perspective. It's very much up to the investor and the investment project to negotiate the terms of this. But anyway, for immigration purposes, you can discount your investment up to a maximum value of 50,000 with any third level education fees that you're going to incur in the first 5 years of your investment.
Okay.
We would have to get some indication. So it's effectively 10% of an enterprise investment.
Yeah.
You can commit 450,000 to the project, and if you are going to commit university or tertiary education fees of up to 50,000 for family members or for yourself.
If the minimum, here's just to throw it in, if the minimum investment is 500,000 and an investor decides they want to put in $1 million,
yeah,
is it still 10%? Is it 100,000?
No, it's 50,000. It's an absolute amount.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it
well,
is
just to clarify,
overall.
just so that people understand it, and there's no misunderstanding there. And the last question that I have, which the multi-entry visa under the Immigrant Investment Program allows people to come and go as they please into this country, recognising the fact that they may have interests elsewhere.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
How does that affect and how does that apply to Europe?
Okay. We can only issue immigration permissions for Ireland. Our permissions are not automatically recognised in other European countries or in the UK, in the Schengen area in particular. However, if we have issued somebody with a stamp 4 for 2 years, I'm using terminology here, but that's effectively permanent residence for 2 years, and a multi-entry visa, I don't think that individual will have any difficulty in obtaining a Schengen visa from one of the Schengen embassies in Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's what they require. I think you can get multi-entry Schengen visas as well for up to a year. Now, we can't guarantee this because this again is the decision of other sovereign states. Nonetheless, and we would stress applying through the Schengen embassies based in Dublin because you have an Irish permission, and the visa staff in those embassies will be familiar with Irish immigration permissions. That would count for a lot, and that would certainly allow an individual to get a requisite permission. I will say this is something that is, I won't say long term, it's perhaps more medium term at the moment. We are negotiating with the UK to have a broad mutual recognition of our immigration permissions as well, possibly for travel purposes initially. That's what's initially being negotiated now. Those negotiations are ongoing. I would like to be able to give you a time frame, but I cannot. But that is an objective. So ultimately, individuals who would hold an Irish permission of this type, our ultimate objective is that they would be able to visit the UK visa-free. Now, that is some way down the line, but negotiations are in progress in relation to achieving that goal. At the moment, you will still have to get a UK visa if you wish to visit the UK. But again, if you have a stamp 4 for 2 years or for 5 years, and you have a multi-entry visa, that will certainly help your case when presenting yourself at the UK embassy here.
I'll throw it open to anybody that has any further queries. I don't know whether I've covered all your queries, but I think I've covered a few.
No more.
Very clear.
Thank you very much.
All our queries already clear.
As I say, we are finalising new guidelines because it has taken some time to finalise the investment funding REIT option. The REIT one is close to finalisation. We have a bit more work to do with the investment fund, but I don't think we're going to hold up our revised guidelines for much longer because it's gone on for much longer than we would have otherwise preferred. So there will be new updated material on the website quite soon. Once it's up there, we're getting it translated into Chinese, Arabic, Russian, and possibly Portuguese and Spanish as well. But those 3 languages initially, Mandarin. So if any of you see any glaring errors in the Mandarin translation, I'd be more than grateful to hear from you. So,
I'm sure they'll let you know. Okay, guys. So are we okay?
Sure, very clear, very good.
Yeah, any questions?
No, maybe one.
When I submit the application, is based on the document or need to go to interview?
No interview. No interview.
No
It's a paper-based examination,
Good.
so you don't even have to travel to Ireland. What I must say is that once the permission has been issued, and there is, or rather, once your application has been accepted and you have to submit the affidavit, The affidavit has to be prepared by a legal practitioner who is registered to practice in Ireland.
Yeah.
Now, there may be some such people abroad as well in various parts of the world, but I don't have a definitive list. I think there might be one or two in some legal firms in Beijing, particularly individuals who have a. In fact, I think some of the big Irish legal firms may have representation there, or at least they would have connections with established legal firms in Beijing as well.
Yeah.
I really don't know. It's something I think that we may try and find out moving forward. But an individual can travel to Ireland, meet a solicitor here. We can only issue the permissions in Dublin as well. I will say we can only issue immigration residence permissions in Dublin. Yeah. Having said that, after you have been accepted, there's no time limit as to when you have to travel to Dublin to take up your permission. So once you get your confirmation that the minister has accepted, you can come whenever it is convenient for you to come. Be it 2 days or 2 years. You know, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, just
and also the neutralization and the main applicants or the need the main applicants private first, or the member of the family can submit.
Everybody is assessed for naturalization individually, so it depends on when you have clocked up your as we say the term depends that you have accumulated the reckonable residency.
Okay.
So an individual, let's say, may send their son or daughter to go to university in Ireland, and they may be going to UCD or Trinity or whichever college. Because they're on a stamp 4 and they're living here and studying, they're getting reckonable residency. Now, the mother and the father may still be living in China because it's not appropriate and they're not able to travel. But so the children may be clocking up residency while the parents are not. So the children may be able to naturalize before the parents in that case. But each person is assessed individually.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's on an individual basis, exactly. We know a lot of people are interested in sending their children to medical school. That's what we hear, or sending them to the Royal College of Surgeons. That's a minimum of 6 years, or is it 7? It's minimum of 6 anyway. Somebody attends the Royal College of Surgeons, they'll be an Irish citizen before they graduate.
Absolutely.
If they so choose, if that's what they're open to. But yeah, they will.
Okay.
Well, maybe we'll just wrap up if we can. First of all, I'd just like to thank Peter and Ian for their time this afternoon. You've been very kind to be welcome us here, and hopefully we'll have something to come back to you and for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to applications, and thank you very much for coming to see us today. It's always very interesting for us to meet potential applicants and to hear their concerns. Hopefully, I've covered everything for you, but. Please, I'll leave my details with Brian, and I'd be more than happy to answer any queries. That's perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
攞張卡片好啊。
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
okay. Feel free to drop us an email.
Yeah, I will, of course. Yeah.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you.
I'm happy.
Of course.